Hello, I'm Jay, and in this video we're going to be completing our knowledge of the C major scale all over the fretboard by looking at and learning about the relative minor scale. To get the most out of this video, you really need to have secured everything from the first video. This means you should now be able to wander freely around the neck using our small 1-octave major scale pattern. And you should know the interval names and the note names. So if you were wondering about the neck, I could stop you on any given note and you'd be able to tell me exactly which interval it was and the name of the note. Right, so now the relative minor. For those of you that don't know, every major scale, major key has a relative minor scale, or relative minor key. What's that? What's the relationship? Well, I'm glad you asked. They're intimately related in a brother and sister kind of way. Nothing incestuous, you understand. Don't get the wrong idea, it's nothing like that. At least I don't think so. The relative minor scale has the same notes as the major scale, but it starts and finishes on a different note. It treats a different note as the root note. In the key of C major, the relative minor scale is A minor. So whereas the scale of C major is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, the scale of A minor is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. The note of A is now the root note. So the scale of C major, scale of A minor, the new scale of A to A, which we have created, is called an A natural minor scale. The word natural refers to the fact that you don't have to change any notes from the major scale from which it is derived. You may occasionally hear it referred to as the Aeolian minor scale. If anyone refers to it as the Aeolian minor scale, the normal protocol is to give them a little slap, prod their nose, and tell them to stop being so pretentious. So now, we want to learn the Aeolian minor scale. All over the fretboard, as we did the C major scale. So first we need the 1-octave pattern, which is 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3. And then we get used to the two manipulations of the pattern, playing it on one string and making the B string adjustments. It doesn't matter which order you go over these two things. I'm just going to go over these things very quickly here, as you should be comfortable with these concepts from the previous video. And because I've done a complete video using this very scale of A minor and the same 1-octave concept, it's called Unlock the Fretboard in Minutes. So if I go over this too quickly for you, please go and watch that. So let's try the 1-octave natural minor pattern with the root note on the E string, on the A string. Could do that in open position as well. Root note on the D string. Root note on the G string. That's it. And then the pattern on one string. Where are we? Then the finishing touch of smoothly transitioning to the next octave is, rather than doing 1, 3, to do 1 slide. And again, just as with the major scale, now try wandering about the fretboard up and down the scale using as many different permutations as you can think of. Then you should say the names of the notes to yourself as you move around, learning the names of the notes. However, unlike the C major scale, don't bother yourself with the interval names. While A minor is of course a scale, a key in its own right, and as such it has its own interval names, we're learning it here to help us learn the scale of C major, so we don't want to confuse matters. Now let's return to our C major scale. While we've mastered the scale and can now move all over the fretboard, you may have noticed that this one small 1-octave shape approach leaves a few small gaps in the fretboard. For example, if we start our C major scale with the root note on the A string, once we reach the next octave, we've left a gap around here which we haven't used. Now, While much of the time moving position is not an issue, especially when you're playing melodically, there are times where you want to move position, where you won't want to move position, to get the notes in the next octave. Indeed, certain things would be impossible to play if you did move position. Of course, if you've learned the one octave pattern all along each string, you should kind of know the names of the notes and know what they are in these gaps anyway. But we can use our knowledge of the relative minor scale to cover these areas. Let's look down in second position where there is a blank area on the B and G strings, on the B and E strings, sorry. Well, we've just finished a one octave pattern, and what are the last three notes of a C major scale? A, B and C, which are of course the first three notes of our A minor, our A relative minor scale. So having played these notes of A, B, C, we now also have the option of carrying up on the natural minor pattern. Our A natural minor pattern also covers the open string area on the lower strings, as we can start our pattern on the open A string. The gap on the bottom E string at the 5th fret is the start of our A minor pattern, and you'll see the rest of the pattern is already there within our major patterns. The whole of the bottom E string looks a bit empty, so you could carry on our minor pattern staying on the bottom E string. The top E string looks a bit bare around the 10th fret. Well, what do you know? We've just finished a major pattern on the B string, so we can use that final ABC as the beginning of our minor pattern. We would, of course, finish it there by going up on the top E string. Now, you might have learned many different bigger patterns in various positions all over the fretboard, but in fact all major scales, and of course the natural minor scales, are solely comprised of these two small one octave patterns, the major and the minor. It's just not immediately obvious because of the B string compensation. So you can see how they both join up across the fretboard. Let's look at a giant fretboard tuned in equal fourths, so there's no compensation needed. Here's the giant fretboard. Now let's start with the major pattern. Oh yes, it's easier to think of the major pattern as containing the B from the previous octave. Then the minor pattern is built from the last three notes of the major scale, as we've discussed. Directly above that, the major pattern starts again, but one fret back. And so it continues. You could of course start anywhere within the pattern. We could have started on the minor pattern, and the pattern goes on the same on and on across the fretboard. If we now get rid of this giant fretboard and just leave the top 6 strings, we see how we have just a small section of the overarching pattern left for our 6 strings. And if we make the B string adjustment, many of you will immediately recognise this pattern that's left as one of the 5 caged patterns. Let's look at another caged pattern and see how it's made up of our 2 small one octave patterns. Many of you will be familiar with this one. See how the lower half is indeed our one octave major scale pattern, which then goes into our minor pattern with the B string adjustment. And the top E string is the start of the major pattern again, starting on the B from the previous octave. And there we have it. You have now fully completed your knowledge of the fretboard in C major. You now know where all the natural notes are on the entire fretboard, and you can wander around everywhere totally secure in your knowledge of where you are in the scale and in the fretboard. And you've done all of this by learning just 2 small patterns. Now we've completed our knowledge of the C major scale. In the next video we're going to start making music, as I show you how to understand the scale orally, develop your oral abilities, develop your sense of melody, improve your improvisational skills, and much more. And guess what? I'm going to show you how to do all of this with just 1 or 2 simple, fun, easy concepts. Thank you for watching. Please like me and subscribe. It makes me feel loved.